Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our session on new trends in resort design. We'd like to take you on a little journey through various aspects of the design that we carry out and how we help clients create a beautiful design, but also something that is very profitable. Luciano?
Yes. So I think where we like to start, it's a very basic question. What is considered a good design? Is something very iconic like Mazza did, buildings are good design? Or if you go to the next, is this considered a good design? I think we can have many opinions on that. But I think the important point is that being a good architect in the hospitality world is very different from being a good architect in general. So I think we work specifically just for hospitality projects because the design is tailor-made around values which are not always the same values of these iconic buildings that we have just shown to you. So what is good design in hospitality architecture? I think we can identify a few points. Probably the most important is designing around the guest experience. The guest is at the center of our design because if we make a memorable experience for the guest, we know that the service is doing well, that the spaces are very attractive, and we know that this is adding value to the owners because an happy guest is a guest that can return and can generate continuously revenues. So designing around the guest experience is fundamental. So it's not just about aesthetic, but it's just also aesthetic merit with practicality.
I think the new trend is, many years ago we used to take photographs of our holidays and take our photos home to our family, but that's no longer good enough. What we have to do now is create memories. And we have to go home and tell stories about those wonderful memories we had on our holiday. So what we're actually doing is we're playing with people's emotions. How do we make people happy? How do we make them cry with joy? How do we make them comfortable? How do we make them feel secure? How do we make them feel at home? These are all extremely important elements to the guest experience that we're looking at in new designs across the world.
Timeless, that's a word that we always use when we speak about the design approach to hotel and resorts in particular. But timeless is not only important for the guest experience, but again, in the dynamics, we as hospitality architects, we have always to blend the beauty of the experience with the economics and the profitability of a project. We are not just artists, we are architects, and for us, to be an hospitality architect is exactly this, to marry an aesthetic value with a practical value. So making something which is timeless, something where the guests enter after 5 years of the opening, after 10 years of the opening, and still feel fresh, it feels vibrant, it feels sexual, is directly making a project a profitable project because you are not in need to repaint a wall or to redo the lobby after 2 years or to rethink to a different restaurant concept constantly. So designing a timeless resort is important aesthetically but also in practical. So if you see the third point, beautiful yet practical. I keep thinking that I consider what is a good architect. I always like to use the example. I can design a wonderful chair that is very beautiful to look at, but in the moment that the guest sits on the chair and he starts to move, he doesn't feel comfortable, then he gets up to find a more comfortable chair, probably I'm a good artist, I'm not a good architect. So in hospitality, as architect, we have the duty to put together the world beautiful and the world practical. That's very essential.
I think the final thing here is for the last 2 decades, there's been a number of projects that are thematic. And this is no longer good enough. People demand authenticity. They want something special, they want something unique, but they want something authentic. It's no longer good enough to go to Dubai and stay in a Polynesian restaurant. And so what we mean by rooted is that we create fresh, forward-thinking designs, but they have to be rooted in the history, the heritage, and the culture of that particular region or country. This is extremely important to get it right, to create something that is timeless and memorable. So let's talk about some other new design trends that we're experiencing in different parts of the world with different operators.
Yes, being ethical, and we will see how we apply these new design trends in the following slides with real projects. Being ethical for us it's a very wide type of word. Being ethical means that as designer, we have the duty to design, of course, architecture that fits the region, that fits the history, an architecture which is respectful and responsible of the environment, and doing an architecture and doing a project that can also benefit the community around, and projects that can be built with local material, local sources. So being ethical, it's really an expansion and a duty that requires deep study of the area that we are working in, deep commitment, and a lot of humility from the designer point of view, not to impose a certain design, but to make sure that the design we do, it fits the purpose of the site, of the geography, and of the history. Then being healthy, that's one of the big trends. We all know that the wellness industry, the spa that is expanding to wellness, and now the wellness that is becoming well-being and is becoming also almost clinical in many aspects, is going to be the big industry for the next 10 years. We are talking about an industry which worth billions. But where the new trends are coming into action is that being healthy physically and being healthy mentally, it's a priority that is becoming a very important trend in all the new resorts that we are designing, especially because the customer, our guest, is much more knowledgeable about treatments, about well-being, about lifestyle than he was 5, 6, or 10 years ago. So that's a very big new trend influencer of
It's
design.
particularly important in the Middle East right now. The Middle East has the highest incidence of obesity and sugar intolerance. And so we're designing some very specific wellness resorts throughout the Middle East, and here in India, in Ananda.
Extended experience for extended stay. This is another one big trend for many different reasons. In the last couple of years, when we design resort, what the client wants and also what the brands want is to extend the period of stay of the guest. So trying to stretch from 2 or 3 days to 4, 5, 6 days. And this can happen in many ways. One way is to create an incredible, healthy spa wellness experience, but it's also to find more reasons to stay in for longer in a resort. One of the reasons and one of the trends is to create a home away from home. A comfortable escape, what we normally say. You still want to give the exclusivity of an escape, the way out of a busy life in the cities, but it still has to be comfortable. And the idea that you are creating a home exclusive, but still it feels a home away from home, is one of the big trends that is starting to take place, especially in Europe and around the Mediterranean. It's something that is coming in the next 2-3 years in a very, very strong fashion.
And if you create something unique and authentic, it becomes curated specially for that particular type of guest. So you end up with what we're calling a curated home, a curated home from home.
Embracing the public realm. This is something which is it's a very strong trend that is taking shape in the United States, is taking shape in Europe. So you will see with the examples that we have in the following slide, it's about sometimes it's the hotel which is opening up to the street. So the F&B, especially offers of the hotel, are not inward looking, but they have a double aspect. So the restaurants or the F&B space can engage with the customers, with the guests of the hotel, but they can also open up to the street. So it becomes, again, a different source of revenue and is giving a new buzz, a new life to the hotel. That's something that we've been doing, for instance, with some JW Marriott products in the United States. Or it can be that hotel that is opening up to events to the public, as we are doing in a project in Milan that we will see very shortly. So all these new trends that we are talking about, we would like to show you how we practically implement these things in real projects. Ananda in the Sahyadris is the second outlet from the famous destination spa operator Ananda in the Himalayas. This will be the second site. It's a site that we designed and which is under construction and hopefully it will open in 1 year time. So this is an incredible site, 360 acres, very large site. And 360 acres with 5 lakes and only 60 rooms family hotel and 20 rooms destination spa hotel and 50 branded villas. When I was saying we need to be ethical in our design, this is a very strong example how we think the right design should approach a project of this caliber. So if you go to the next. This is a 360-acre site. We have over 60 buildings on site. So it's a small hotel, but it's all fragmented with many buildings. But we have on the site over 10,000 existing trees. So we managed to build a hotel which has already all the building in places, cutting less than 10 trees. So there is a lot of talking about be sustainable, and I think that's a danger zone when we speak about luxury hospitality, because when you are selling a room of 80 square meters at $1,000 a night, you know that the customer, you know that the guest will pretend to have a 6 meters by 4 meters glazed window. So to be sustainable with this kind of request, it's really very difficult. So we feel that a lot of times the word sustainable is more used as a marketing tool than being a real effective thing. What we did here, it was to place every single building on the floor carefully. Then we walked the site for 1 week with the operator, with the owner, and literally we moved 3 degrees one building, or we moved 1 meter because we were saving an 100-year-old mango tree that was becoming into the courtyard. Just turning a bit, we were saving a banyan tree. So we managed to do all the settlement, which is 60 buildings plus 50 villas, cutting less than 10 trees over 8,000 existing trees. Another thing which is about being seriously ethical and responsible doing a design. With this project, we are giving life is water, if you push, water for life, and life is water. What we are providing with this project, the community of local tribes, which are 20 kilometers around the site, for 5 to 6 months a year, they don't have water at all in their wells. With our project, already now, we are making sure that the entire community, they have full water for domestic use as well for irrigation, for the paddy fields for the entire year. So this is what we think is being ethical and substantially ethical. And the other thing's important that there are some local tribes around the areas that we are building, which are having an incredible knowledge that goes back to centuries about seeds, roots, plants, which are part of the jungle environment, which are extremely useful for wellness and for being healthy. What happens is that the elders, the people that have this knowledge are finding difficult to give this heritage to the local young population because they prefer to go out in the city. So with this project, we are making sure that we are conserving this knowledge and we keep alive the tradition of the tribes.
Another one of our projects in Mexico, this is an award-winning Rosewood hotel property. And as you can see, it's very authentic to that region. We're picking up on the history and the heritage of that country and region. But if you look closely, you can see there are some very, very cost-effective materials that we've used. Simple plaster, simple timber, and this makes for a very cost-effective, very profitable hotel, extremely successful for the owner and developer. And it's about scene setting. It's creating those moments of memories that I talked about earlier to take home to your family. But it's ethically built with the local materials, as Luciano was saying. It's rooted in the history and the heritage of that region. Similarly, a different project in Dubai. This is a project that is a wellness resort right out in the middle of the desert. As I said, they have a very high incidence of obesity issues. Now the top in the world, more so than per 1,000 head of population than America and the UK. And here we're creating a very specific wellness resort. It's hub in the center with all of the treatments and medications that go on in that area, and then with a whole series of guest wings coming off because the client wanted every guest room to engage with the desert and the gazelles that live in that area. Here's one of the guest rings, and you can see how it nestles very well into the desert. But most of the people will spend most of the day in the treatment areas. From an economic point of view, it's very interesting. The room rates for these facilities are very low, but most of the revenue and the profit is made on the treatments. People will spend all the day there, and they'll spend thousands of dollars on the treatments and probably just a couple of hundred on the room rate. So a very successful financial model for the client.
Four Seasons Bodrum, this is a new Four Seasons that we have started to design about 6 months ago. It's a beautiful coastline in Bodrum in Turkey. It's about 3 kilometers of seafronting land with incredible views in incredible water. What is interesting and where these are considered new trends, especially for Europe, is that you will see it's an 125 rooms Four Seasons hotel, but we have 90 branded residences. So one of the trends that our clients really strongly believes, he wants to make sure that who is coming to this resort is not staying for a few days, but is staying for weeks. So what we are implementing in this specific project is a state-of-the-art business center which is more than 1,000 square meters, so it's something never seen before. But in this business center, everyone will find lawyers, bankers, accounting services, so everything that you need to run your business from your villa or from your room without feeling the necessity to go back to Istanbul or to go back to your typical office. So again, is a home away from home, or is an office away from office that create the reason for you to enjoy more your property and to stay longer. And the second aspect, which is very interesting, we were talking about the evolution from spa to wellness, wellness to well-being, and then to clinical aspects of this. What we are doing here, we are not trying to do everything. There is a very clear demarcation. We have a 2,000 square meter spa, and will be run by a spa operator, and we have a 2,500 square meter wellness center, which will be run by a specific, very dedicated wellness center. And then finally, on this project, when we say we like to design, but we always like to be rooted, it doesn't mean that we are thematic. For instance, the owners wanted for the residential and for the hotel to have an architecture which is very fresh, very unique, and very contemporary. So we came up with this design, but still there are connections to the territory. All the stone that you see on this villa is coming directly from the site, which is very rich in this very nice gold-looking stone. All the details of the columns are taken from the local heritage. So it doesn't mean that being rooted, we have just to make a sort of this land, as frequently happens. We can be rooted, but yet contemporary, sophisticated, and elegant, like we are doing with this villa, for instance. Then I wanted to touch base. Unfortunately, we cannot reveal any images of this project because it's confidential, and we've started recently to work on it. Is the Lila God that you all know. It's a very famous and nice property in South Goa, and where it's different and where we talk about new trends. The property has been sold about 1.5 years ago to an Indian family living in London. And the property is doing very well. They're very loyal customers, and financially is very sound. But what they wanted is, we want to create the next generation resort. We want to be ready in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, not just to be the best in India. We want to be on the top in Southeast Asia. So this is a very rare case where we take a property which is functioning well, but we are even elevating the quality, and elevating the quality means even elevating the already very good profitability. So we are designing a social spa, which is something never seen before in India. It's a garden spa, over 3,000 square meters. We are enlarging the ballroom facilities, the conference facilities, 800 square meters of new ballroom, new room types, big kids club, big teenagers club, new swimming pool. So really taking all this, again, we face a big challenge with the new airport coming in Goa. This property will be a 2.5-hour distance from the airport. So we cannot afford to count on a 2 days or 2 night stay. We need to create enough interest to get people staying 3, 4, 5 nights and justify the long transfer from the new airport.
Something very different in Milan. We're working for the Ferragamo brothers. This is a 16th century seminario, a place where priests get taught their priesthood. They said, create something of wow factor, but you can't do anything with the building. So this was an interesting challenge. And so we created this, we flooded the courtyard to create a wow factor. This could be fountains, it could be a mirror, water feature, or it could be turned off. And what we did, the client wanted to attract a number of people in from the main shopping street, which is immediately adjacent. And so we put the high-end boutique within the the ground floor of the building, and then created this temporary demountable shade structure in the center, come cafe. And so you can have car shows, you can have fashion shows, you can have culinary shows, food shows, in there. So we created something of wow factor without changing the building, and we created a totally flexible space that would enhance the revenue and profit of the hotel.
Yes, finally, this is an example. This is AJW Marriott that we designed in Austin. And this is where the trend is coming, where especially the F&B outlet of the hotel are not completely inside the hotel, but just on the border of the hotel. So it's like a double-faced type of F&B offering. So it can be used internally from the guest, but the F&B can open up and be completely in touch and entertain with the public, which is walking along the public street. So this sort of engagement, not preserving the spaces just for the guests, but extending the hotel experience to the street, is one of the strongest trends that we have seen growing up about city hotel, and it's something that is becoming more and more popular and trendy all over Europe and the United States.
So thank you.
Thank you.
We have a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions about the projects or ideas that we're putting forward? There's one over here. Microphone, please.
Hi. Do you have any specific wellness resort that you have in mind which you think would turn out? Because you see a lot of hotels talking about wellness, but I don't see that a lot of people actually understand wellness as of now. So do you see any particular hotel or a resort who's truly cracked it, and that is where the future wellness model can look like if you were to be a fortune teller 10 years from now?
Certainly the one we're designing in Dubai, which I showed earlier, that's a true wellness. It's not a spa. That's a wellness clinic. The wellness consultant is GoCo out of Bangkok. They're advising on the component parts of that, the treatments. That will be very specifically a wellness without spa components.
And I think in 1 year time when we will have another opening, I will say more than wellness, that is well-being, which is slightly different things. But that will be absolutely, I think, in the entire Southeast Asia, a new chapter of how doing resort of this type, balancing the luxury aspect with the spiritual and the well-being aspect. What is very interesting, which is the dilemma of many owners, there is an element in wellness that starts to border the clinical, and there are many resorts that are starting to become more medical than wellness. So that's a very fine line that especially owners have to be very careful, because it's very easy to go from a very good wellness facility that you can really manage with good staff. As soon as you start to cross the border and be more clinical, more medical, you need to start to employ good doctors, good nurses, and it's becoming a nightmare to manage in the future, because the doctors are expensive, they stay with you 6 months, and they run away for a better offer in the Maldives or whatever. So it's a very interesting and bubbling world, but I think what our clients are doing in Turkey with Four Seasons, identifying clearly, I have a spa, I'm not pretending to push the spa to be a wellness. I have a spa and I have a wellness, very defined, that I think it's a very honest, but also it makes a lot of sense in terms of managing the expectation of the guest.
You're quite right to ask the question, because there aren't many that are open right now.
Yeah.
Probably the closest to us in Europe would be in Spain. There's the Shah Resort that is a true wellness resort. One over here.
Thank you. I have a question about modular construction, because we see more and more publicity and hype about it. sometimes with a consultant or constructors talking about it for upscale projects and involving results. Do you think, as an architect, this is a sustainable solution and option for an upscale result? And is it something that you would consider proposing to an owner or an investor? Or is it something that would be imposed to you and that you would be interested in studying?
I think it depends on where you are in the world. The concept of having something factory made as opposed to on a building site with lots of rain and mud around, the concept is right, to have something made under factory conditions where you can control quality is a good concept. However, if you don't have the facilities in the country that you're working in or in the region you're working in, then it's not such a good idea. So it really does depend whereabouts in the world. If the country doesn't have the correct workmanship to do on site, then you may consider having factory controlled conditions, even if it was in a different country. So the dynamics of where it is, I think, at the moment plays a part in whether you would do it or whether you wouldn't do it.
Okay, but besides from this, in terms of aesthetic and from an architect point of view, is it something that you consider acceptable with the positioning of luxury, or?
Yes, why not? I mean, if the interior design is the same, and it's under factory conditions where you can control quality, providing that you make the wall solid and with all of the sound insulation in between, and it's when you tap it, it's not sounding hollow, then I don't see why for rooms and bathrooms you can't do it. Bathrooms are already done, but some of the poorer quality ones is where they're using cheaper materials, poor sound insulation, poor wall construction, then it gives the game away, and this is not so good. So there's a few provisos. If you get those right, then it could be considered for certain instances. Any more questions? Time is up, it's saying here, so thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.